Welcome, Wargamers, to the mineral-rich graveyards of the Mortal Realms, because today we are traveling over to the Realm of Metal, Chamon, to talk about a very special sub-faction that exists within the Nighthaunt. No one in particular asked for this, but it's a faction that I think is really cool because it highlights some of my favorite moments in the opening saga of Age of Sigmar, and so we're going to talk about the Quicksilver Dead. That's right, we're getting spooky up in here. So if you're not familiar with Age of Sigmar very much, this is from the Nighthaunt Battle Tome. It's any Nighthaunt can be anything. You can kind of do whatever you want army-wise, but they have specific sub-factions for each army that kind of highlight a cool story arc that exists within the greater setting. So in this video, we're going to highlight their story with a little bit of a kind of an exemplary battle from their history, and it is quite exemplary, and then we're going to move into talking about the finer details of the Quicksilver Dead, and then, of course, ending this video like I end all others with a discussion on why is this cool. But right before we begin, I want to give a shout out to Not Just Gaming, an incredible store over on the East Coast that has everything you need from Games Workshop products to hobby supplies from awesome providers like AK Interactive, Gamergrass, all those kinds of things. So if you have another army project coming up or you need basing materials for stuff, please consider using that affiliate code, because any single time you do, it goes directly to supporting me, my wife, our cats, the whole channel, everything, and I cannot thank you enough. So for those of you who are brand new to Age of Sigmar, and you maybe got in the 3rd edition when now it's Stormcast versus the Auric War clans as the starter set, you might not know about the Nighthaunt. Well, buckle up. I'm going to give you a very brief overview, and then we're going to move into talking about our specific sub-faction. The Nighthaunt are the restless undead, spirits, geists, all those kinds of things that exist all across from the multitude of wars that have gone on across the Warhammer universe. Now, normally, when a spirit dies, if they're died in particular agony or something like that, they might haunt the local area, and if a wisp of death magic gets into the area and it's strong enough, a few of them can stir and become geists and just kind of haunt people, but they're very aimless about it. They don't have much of a sense of self. And that was until Nagash came back onto the scene and the events of the Soul Wars began to happen, in which basically, I'm not going to go into full detail about that, but he rose a whole bunch of undead, meaning the spirits everywhere. A Nighthaunt became a full army at that point that was playable for us in the real world, and the idea was that he rose a whole bunch of them and galvanized them into a force. However, it's important to note for our purposes today that Nighthaunt exists outside of Nagash. This is a naturally occurring thing, and it just stands out because, like, for Nagash, so much of what he does is taking a natural thing, meaning death, and putting it to incredibly unnatural proportions, right? Death magnified. Ossiarch Bone Reapers are conglomerations of thousands of dead people just jammed together in an army that's meant to spread death. The Nighthaunt, however, are a naturally occurring thing. Some places in this fantasy universe are just haunted. Spirits of ancestors can come to help and hinder. All kinds of cool stuff. So, like, it's kind of a baseline that they already existed and were known about, but it was when Nagash did his big Soul Wars opening spell, resulting in the Necro Quake, that's when things went and turned them up to 11. And the reason I stress all of that is because for newer players, when you see, like, this video is about a Nighthaunt sub-faction, it's easy to associate them with the Nighthaunt that you and I know now. But in the beginning, when Age of Sigmar first launched, the Nighthaunt as a faction didn't exist. In fact, the first real death faction ever even encountered in the Age of Sigmar was with the Quicksilver Dead, who is, of course, the sub-faction we'll be talking about. Now, this event happened in the opening acts of Age of Sigmar, often called the Rum Gate Wars. That's kind of like the overall, campaign arc that we were going through. It was a collection of 4 huge campaign books with all kinds of missions and lore and all these kinds of neat details. And in that story, I believe it was the Celestial Vindicators, were sent down to the Realm of Metal, Chamon, to find any dwarves that they could. They were on a scouting mission. On this journey, they run into a Chaos Fortress. By that I mean it's a Tzeentchian Chaos Sorcerer in this huge fortress that's really cool because every time a Stormcast dies near it, it sucks in the lightning that is their soul and, like, it goes into a giant battery. That fight doesn't go so well for the Sorcerer, and so he does the evil villain thing of running away. Well, the place that he runs away from is right near a city called Elixia. This is, of course, still in the Realm of Metal. He didn't go realm to realm or whatever. It's not terribly far away from the site of the first battle, and it's known in an area called the Hanging Gardens of Anvrok. Very cool. This is when Age of Sigmar was really out there fantasy-wise. I love this stuff. And so now the Stormcast army, having realized that what the Tzeentchian lord was hiding this whole time was Gal Maraz, Sigmar's hammer, now they're like, okay, well, we got wiped out, but we're going to go right back in, get that hammer. That's now a priority. Forget the dwarves. We're going to figure that out later. If you're curious as to the details of this story, I actually do have an entire Rum Gate Wars campaign series. I will put the link to that in the description down below, so please go check it out. It's a very cool story. I'm in sum up mode. And to do an even better job, we're going to move into the exemplary battle for the Quicksilver Dead by reading it straight out of the Nighthaunt battle tome called The Alliance of Anvrok. During the Stormcast strike at the chaos-occupied Hanging Valleys of Anvrok, the ill-fated Thostos Bladestorm matches his might against the sorcerer Efrix, the Tzeentchian magister who prosecuted the city of Elixia and in doing so ended the life of the gifted swordmaker Solemnis. Shortly before being slain by a sorcerous explosion, Thostos spies the light of the hammer Gal Maraz, that holy relic that came to rest in Elixia after the Battle of the Burning Skies. Reforged and later sent back alongside Lord Vandus and Ionis Cryptorn at the head of the Heldenhammer Crusade, Thostos is soon locked in battle against the forces of chaos once more. It is the ghost of the weaponsmith Solemnis, remade as a banshee, that tips the balance. By summoning forth a host of Quicksilver Dead and a veritable arsenal of flying Solemnite blades, she fights alongside Ionis Cryptorn and his warriors to drive out the Tzeentchians from Elixia. It is this alliance that sees Gal Maraz reclaimed and returned to the hand of Sigmar, turning the tide of the Rum Gate Wars, though at a cost. Since that day, Elixia has been ruled only by vengeful, shimmer-skinned geists. So a couple things we learn here that build on top of the basics that I already laid out. Interesting to note that this then explains Elixia was never colonized. It was a full city that existed. I mean, it was ruined, it was wrecked, but it could have been rebuilt into a city of Sigmar, which I think would have made a lot of sense. However, they were just like, nope, let the dead have it. As I mentioned before, they are an appearance of Nighthaunt as a cohesive force before Nagash even woke up, which is really cool. This is technically the OG army. And now moving from their exemplary battle, we can go to their actual lore section later on in the book and kind of just pick out a few details that are kind of really, really unique and interesting and just kind of add more flavor. Unlike other Nighthaunt who are ethereal in nature, there's the Scarlet Doom. They are ethereal, but they come out of blood. But like that's how they get there. Once they're out of the blood, they take on an ethereal aspect and they function just like other Nighthaunt. This means other Nighthaunt can go through walls or pierce any shield as long as like the opponent's will is not strong enough to pierce, or stop the blade. But what makes the Quicksilver Dead unique is that they have substance. They are not truly ethereal. They might as well be, but instead of like a vapor or a gas kind of a thing, instead think of like liquid mercury, or the T1000 from Terminator 2, where you can kind of pool into a liquid. And so like they functionally are the same. A door won't stop them. Regular Nighthaunt will go through it. The Quicksilver Dead will just pool around it unless it's airtight. And they're just infused with all kinds of specifically realm magic. The magic of metal, Chamon. Now, what we also learn in this little lore segment here is that Nagash gives them free reign, which is a very interesting concept for his character. Because yes, I said that they are a faction that existed before Nagash, but lots of things existed before Nagash woke back up in the Age of Sigmar. I'm talking about like the fact that he lets them do whatever they want is very unusual for his very neurotic character. He takes in other armies as he goes. Other vampire dynasties, he can just kind of snatch them up and kind of bring them into his greater, I guess you could say, war machine. But the idea of leaving a place alone seems very not Nagashi. And I think it's for two very good reasons. One, they're already miserable. Like, Nagash's thing is putting himself in the judge's seat to be like, you deserve all these terrible things, I'm going to make you a chain rasp for all eternity, that kind of deal. But the Chaos armies that came through here in the Age of Chaos did these people of Elixia dirty, okay? Like, I think they're already in enough eternal punishment that Nagash is like, oh, jeez, you know what, you're doing good, you're fine. This seems sufficient. That lady who we talked about before, Solemnis, she is the town's blacksmith, basically put Elixia on the map as a super city because she was such a great craftsman of weapons. to give you a sense of how they treated the people here when it was ransacked by chaos, they boiled her alive in her own cauldron, like the forge cauldron, where they kind of like turn metal into liquid, which seems like a bad idea in the realm of metal. It seems like that's so ironic that it would just like, you know, spout forth an entire army of undead liquid metal ghosts. The point is I'm getting at is that the people here were already so angry and incensed and in pain that maybe Nagash didn't see the need to take over and like inflict more punishment. He's like, that they're already doing what I would do to them anyway. But the second thing is this, right? There's a few ideas that I have here where the people of Anvarok, meaning the Quicksilver Dead in general, that whole region that they kind of dominate. One, it's good to just have someone who can act as a middleman. Like maybe Nagash doesn't want to take control because if he ever needs to parlay, there's at least one stable place that is not actively on a massive crusade to kill everybody. That's kind of nice to have. But also, if he has no specific plans for Chamon in general, why stir that pot too, right? They already staked out a claim. No one goes near the city. It belongs to the dead. Everyone understands that, even Sigmar. So that's good? Okay, cool, thumbs up. We're just going to let that sit. We're going to focus elsewhere. And he has. I mean, of course, Nagash has been everywhere, from trying to attack the 8 points with Catacross. He's marching in Gur with the, I think it's the Ivory Host. He's got Nighthaunt campaigns going out. Like he's already in a lot of fronts, so if he has a stable place that's already marking their own territory, he's like, fine. Whatever the reason, though, it does make them extremely unique when you compare them to the other Nighthaunt armies. And so that's honestly all there really is when it comes to like the actual lore details. I kind of want to move into why is this cool, because conceptually I think they're cooler than the actual facts, right? Saying that you're liquid metal and not ethereal is probably the most crazy thing from a surface level that's about them. But one thing I love about the Quicksilver Dead is, of course, one, they appeared in a part of Age of Sigmar history that I really personally liked. I like Chamon as a setting quite a bit, but also they were a naturally occurring thing. And I liked the idea that these things were happening all over the place, that an entire city, if enough energy, enough attention was brought there, that like the echoes of terrible things done in the past is enough to kind of raise up the dead. You don't belong here, like we were killed viciously, this is our place now. And I wish there were more stories like that. Just, I don't know, as much as I like the idea of Nagash kind of being the Lord of Undeath, and I really do appreciate his character, flaws and all, I do often think like, man, I wish there was just a little bit more of a nudge to players in the specific battle tomes to form armies that are just unaligned with him. Maybe not against Nagash, but certainly like this, operate as free agents. Give me some of that. Because the whole like Nagash is all is Nagash thing is really cool when Nagash is the main character, but when he's sidelined for, say, Chaos and Be'lakor and all those other guys to shine, it just kind of seems like it gets a little bit dull unless there's other kingdoms doing their own thing. And this story was really fun when it came out because it gave us this idea of what was lost in the Age of Myth. So Age of Myth is here, this place is hopping, right? Alexia is a massive industry town in Chamon that's researching metallurgy as both a science and a magic. I mean, of course, it's the realm of metal. All these really cool innovations are happening. This is where the KO are born, the Keragen Overlords, I apologize. And it just seems so fun. And we don't often get glimpses into the Age of Myth, right? We have the world that was, meaning Warhammer Fantasy Battles, and then we have things going on now of like established cities and holds and scattered territories that are being assaulted by chaos. But there was that little tiny bit of time in the Age of Myth where we get such rare glimpses as to what everyday life was like. These were people who existed, had their own world, their own industry, their own stories, and it was a thread that was cut short. And I like learning about those stories. It makes the world Age of Sigmar feel like it has a history that is not Warhammer Fantasy Battles, which is technically true. It just doesn't always seem that way. So I like those instances. I would like to hear your thoughts about the Quicksilver Dead. I don't know anything about them on the table, like as far as playing them. I do like Banshees as a concept of just screaming at people until they die from it. It's a very fun idea. I think this could be a very cool army, and I would love to see it on the table. So if you have any ideas, let me know. I feel like going over and getting some Turbo Dork paints would be the best way to do this. Just lead belcher Turbo Dork and you're good to go. But I'd like to hear your thoughts or how you painted yours. So let me know in the comments down below, and I will check you out there. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and I'll catch you in my next Age of Sigmar lore video. Happy wargaming.